This episode is all about words from the cross. Let's delve behind the dots. My Passiontide anthem, Words from the Cross, was commissioned by the Church of St Mary's, Fordingbridge. I wrote it at the end of 2019 and it was published at the beginning of 2020, and its first performances were planned for Easter 2020. Well, we all know what happened then. So lockdown prevented that from happening. And so I thought, well, I want to release it in some way. And so I got in touch with my wonderful Swingle singing colleagues and said, any chance you could help me to make a remote recording of it? And so we each recorded where we were, and my brother put it together in one of those now very familiar little boxed videos where you can see everybody's faces. But now I'm happy to say that we have recorded it with London Voices on this album, Heaven to Earth. It is track 7, Words from the Cross. Sometimes I like to write my own words, and this piece is an example of that. I love an acrostic poem, so I decided that since I'd called it Words from the Cross, that I would make each line of the text begin with a letter which eventually spelled out the word cross. So for example, the first line I wrote, "Come hear the words that Jesus spoke." And then the second verse, "Ready to give his life." Then I wrote, "Offering up himself for love." Then suddenly up to God he cried. And then finally, sour wine was given to him. And then I wanted to make it quite a strophic setting, structured verse, chorus, and that there would be a similar musical setting each time. The idea being that if the congregation wanted to, they could join in, certainly with the chorus, but maybe also with the verse if they had the words in front of them. I'm a great believer in audiences and congregations joining in occasionally so that they can feel part of the action, as it were. And so I settled on G minor. I wanted the piece not to go too high in the vocal range because I was keeping in mind this idea that maybe the congregation could join in. So I wanted to keep it within an octave range, similar sort of vocal range to a hymn. So therefore, the top D would be the top of that range and the low D the bottom, with G in the middle. So it just made sense to have G minor as the key. The piece opens with the tune that comes in the chorus. And again, this is deliberate because I wanted it to be that when the congregation or the audience first heard the chorus, that it would be in some senses familiar to them because they would already have heard it in the introduction. So that's the greater love. That's the beginning of the chorus each time. And then it's a syllabic setting, a homophonic setting for the verses, because there are a lot of words to get through. So this time I wasn't looking for melismas or for a polyphonic texture, but very much a homophonic texture where the words were very clear so that also the story could be clear. So for example, "Come hear the words that Jesus spoke" is very clear to hear because everybody is singing the same words at the same time. The advantage of writing your own lyrics is that you can construct them exactly how you want them. I wanted the first part of each verse to be definitely suited to a minor tonality, and then the second part of each verse to be more suited to a major tonality. In this case, E flat major. It's nice to move from G minor to E flat major because two of the notes, G and B flat, are in common. So that's ready to give his life for us. And then you've got the chorus. The contrast in verse 2 is now that the tune is in the lower voices. So the tenors and the basses sing, "Offering up himself for love, he said to his mother and John." And then the tune passes back into the soprano part. Son, behold your mother. At that point, I made it a cappella. That is to say, the organ stops playing and it's just the voices. This is a technique that I love to use when I want to draw attention to the words, but also to the pathos of the moment. When it comes to the moment when Jesus says, "It is finished," that's another moment where the organ stops and you've just got the choir singing at that moment. Whenever I write a piece of music, I always finish it and then take it into my home studio, record it. So I record the soprano and alto lines and my husband records the tenor and bass, and we do a MIDI organ part. And it's by singing it that I know what changes need to be made, because it's really important to me as a singer, as well as a composer, that everything I write feels nice to sing. So if, for example, there's not a good place to breathe, I'll come away and I'll add a breath in. Or if something doesn't feel comfortable in terms of the vocal range with the particular words that I'm singing at that point, then I will change it. So I think for me, I very much write music from the perspective of a singer rather than from just a composer. So my hope is that when you come to sing these pieces, they feel nice and comfortable to sing. And then for the final words from the cross, I've gone into a slower tempo and a quieter dynamic. And I've deliberately put lots and lots of rests in there, because although most singers could sing that phrase all in one breath, sometimes breaths are there not just because the singers might need them, but to add to the moment of the story. And at this point in the story, Jesus's breath is coming to an end. So I do hope that that short introduction to my words from the cross might inspire you to sing it in your Passion Tide services with your choir.